Hi friends. My problem is that I am powerless over drugs and alcohol and codependency and this COVID-19 virus. My name is Arlene, and the solution is that today I choose recovery. I'm here hanging out in one of my favorite places where this is where I choose to listen for a word from God every day, and I get to hang out with my grandkids here as well. So here I am recording this message with some very cool recording equipment. I've got a lavalier mic and cords and all kinds of things. Pretty awesome, right? Well, here's the deal. Generally, I don't know zip about technology. I was perfectly happy keeping it that way. Well, until just recently, because I've had to learn all kinds of technology that I don't like to learn in this new era of recovery. But what I am a zillion% sure of is that I need recovery. So I choose to learn the technology. I'm choosing to overcome this obstacle and learn new things. Going forward into a new recovery world takes courage to overcome obstacles. We just have to go forward, not backwards, when it comes to recovery. I mean, when I look behind me at my active addiction, what I see there is so scary that it makes me know that I need to go forward, whatever it takes, no matter what I need to overcome. And for me, it's going to take courage to overcome obstacles. And maybe it's going to take courage for you to overcome obstacles too. When we read the Serenity Prayer at just about like every recovery meeting I've ever been to in my life, we say, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can. Change means we need to overcome the obstacles to change, and it takes courage to do that. It means we have to step out of the old and into the new. So that's what I want to chat about today, accessing that courage, the courage to overcome obstacles to change. Because there's lots of new stuff going on nowadays, and lots of it we can't change, but there's a lot that we can. So it's going to take God to grant us the courage to overcome the obstacles to change. Because here's what's up with me. I need God to give me the strength to go forward to change. And then I need Him to give me the perseverance to keep going no matter what the obstacles come my way as I go. So this isn't just bravado I'm talking about. It's not just bravado, not just a false courage to bluff through hard times. No, I've done a bunch of that, just pretending to be tough. And I guarantee you, friends, that I am just not tough enough, not nearly, on my own power to overcome the sort of obstacles that this new reality is presenting me with. So I want God to give me real strength to overcome obstacles, and then I want to change, to adapt. So I want us to look at the Bible today to help us. Today I want to get into the book of Joshua, which is a very cool book to read. If you like a good story, I would totally recommend it for your reading pleasure. If you get a chance, just open up Joshua. And Joshua knew a bit about overcoming obstacles, and he knew something about courage as well. Now, who was Joshua? Well, to answer that, we need to get a little backstory first. Joshua was Moses' right-hand man, which is all good, but who was Moses? Well, Moses was God's right-hand man. Moses spoke directly to God. He brought down the 10 Commandments on tablets from a mountain. He was the channel between God and the Hebrew people. He led the Israelites out of Egypt. He brought them 40 years through the desert, all the way to the edge of the Promised Land. In other words, Moses was a big deal. And Joshua was Moses' assistant. So have you ever been an assistant manager? It's really a great position because you're sort of in charge, but the manager is the one who really takes all the heat, right? Well, Joshua was sort of Moses' assistant manager, and it probably was a pretty sweet gig for him. Well, until the time came for Moses to die. Because here's what happened, which got Joshua into a load of stress and a whole set of impossible obstacles to overcome. The book of Joshua in the Bible begins, chapter 1, verses 1 through 2, like this. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant. He said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land I'm giving them. Say what? God is speaking to Joshua now. and telling him to lead the people. So this is big. This is big because between men, women, and children, there were about 2 million people just waiting around for someone to lead them into the promised land after Moses died. And as for the size of the promised land, well, it encompassed about 60,000 square miles, and it had to be conquered first, and you have to get across this huge river, the Jordan River, to reach it. So here's Joshua, up until now an assistant manager, and God speaks to him and says, in essence, all these people, all this land, it's up to you now, Josh, because Moses is dead. Your turn to step up. So how do you think Joshua felt about all this? I mean, imagine being him. Up until this time, pretty much everything Joshua has accomplished up to now, Moses told him to do it. But now how do you think he feels? Because there's no Moses to tell him how to overcome the obstacles. There's just him, 2 million people, and 60,000 miles of land on the other side of the Jordan River, already occupied by other people who probably aren't going to take too keenly to just moving out and letting the Israelites move in. I think Joshua was probably overwhelmed by the obstacles in front of him. But God has a word for Joshua in his situation. I'm sure God knew exactly how overwhelming this new thing is for him, because in Joshua 1, 6 through 9, God speaks to Joshua again. And he says this, he says, "Be strong and courageous, for you're the one who'll lead these people to possess all the land I swore to their ancestors I would give them. Be strong and very courageous. Study this book of instruction continually. Meditate on it day and night, so you will be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. This is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." This is a word from God to you and me as well, friends. Be strong and courageous. You know, Joshua is given a huge task that he doesn't know how to do. There are a ton of obstacles to doing it, and it's overwhelming and it's confusing. And God says, "I will be with you." And this sounds to me that what God is saying to Joshua and to us is just go, armed with his promises, whether we feel them or not, just go. And so Joshua, he says, "Okay, if you say so, God," and he takes a deep breath, and he becomes willing to go forward to obey the Lord, come what may. And lots of things come what may for Joshua. For instance, at this point, the promised land he's supposed to lead the people into, it's ruled by the kings of 31 states scattered through the region. He has to conquer each one of these 31 states before his people can live there. So, first things first, right? Joshua has to start figuring out what to conquer first, right? So Jericho is at the gateway to the promised land. Maybe Jericho should be first. You got to start somewhere. And take a hint from this. You got to start somewhere when it comes to overcoming obstacles that are overwhelming. You know, there's an old saying, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time. But you got to take the first bite. So anyway, Joshua decides to conquer Jericho first. Good decision, but how to do it? Joshua has to get a couple of million people there to begin with before even thinking about how to conquer the land, right? And like I said, there's this huge river between them and the land, the Jordan River. So what in the world? Can you just hear Joshua asking, how do I get over these obstacles, God? He needs strength. He needs direction from God. So let me stop a minute and ask you, what obstacles are you facing right now that are preventing you from starting what you need to do these days? What do you need courage to overcome right this moment? What's right in front of you that you know needs doing, but the obstacles, they loom over you ominously. They need to be handled and you're afraid or overwhelmed or confused. Where do you need to start? Maybe you need courage to overcome obstacles in your recovery program. I mean, do you have some addictions, afflictions, and compulsive behaviors that are new ones, maybe, that are starting to show themselves in this new era of living? You know, getting and staying sober is scary, but we've got to overcome the fear of creating new recovery routines online or on the phone. Learning how to be transparent about our problems, admitting that we need people and Jesus even more than ever. It may be overwhelming. The obstacles may be many. But when are you going to take that first step with the courage of God with you? Perhaps it's time to ask God for the courage to change. You know, the best time to start is now. Take one step. It could be you have some barrier to overcome in your marriage, or maybe some other relationships that are difficult. There's nothing like being together more often or being forced to be apart to shine light on the problems you've been trying to ignore in relationships. So are there some steps you need to take to change yourself? Steps to improve your communication or intimacy, or to ask for forgiveness, or maybe to offer some. Maybe it's time to ask God for the strength and the courage to take that first step. The best time to start is now. Just take one step. It could be your finances, maybe, or your job situation that's challenging you or paralyzing or confusing right now. How to get out of the pain of all of this. Could be your adult kids are driving you to emotional, physical, financial distraction. Maybe your codependency might be raging right now, but the thought of setting boundaries is paralyzing. Yet God says, you have prayed for the courage to change the things that you can, and I am giving you the strength to do it. I will help you over the obstacles. There's no better time than now to start. Take one step. You know, courage to do what overwhelms us, in other words, the courage to change, can only come from God. God gets us over the obstacles to change. And He will not lead you to it without leading you through it. God doesn't just speak a word to you and then send you off to deal with it alone. But it's only you and me that can actually physically take that first step. So back to Joshua. Joshua asked God what step to take to cross the Jordan River with all these people. And God tells him to just have the people step into the water of the Jordan, and the Jordan will part, and they'll be able to walk across the river. What? What? In fact, in Joshua 3:13, God says this, as soon as their feet touch the water, the flow of water will be cut off upstream, and the river will stand up like a wall. Well, I'm sure this isn't the sort of plan that Joshua would have made himself. Let's all just walk across the Jordan River. That'll work. But Joshua takes that step. And although the Bible isn't completely clear on it, I imagine that God dried out the riverbank and made it smooth enough for the people to walk across, or else 2 million people would never have made it across it. God works it out. That's the way God is. You know, I remember when I was not a pastor, I was a person in recovery just sitting in the pews of a church when I heard God tell me that He wanted me to be a pastor. Now, I heard Him, but it felt to me like there were too many obstacles to overcome to possibly pursue it. For instance, like every single thing in my past pre-recovery life, I mean, they simply don't ordain people like me. And I knew it because I had done my research. I didn't take those first steps to do it for literally years and years because I couldn't seem to change my attitude about myself, my view of who I was. But there came a time when I had a Joshua moment. It was the moment I finally said, God, you show me how and I'll do it. And God said to me, Arlene, this is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And here I am. You know the rest of this story. God showed me how to overcome each obstacle step by step, only one step at a time now, and never all at once. And I took each of the steps towards change, and here I am. I'm telling you this story. You know, courage comes as we seek and follow the Lord each step of the way. So think about the action you know you need to take, but you can't see past the obstacle right now. If you ask God, He will give you the courage to change what you need to change to overcome that obstacle. And if you take that step and ask the Lord again, He will give you the next step. So in case you don't know the rest of the story of Joshua, let me give you the Cliff Notes version of it. Joshua got across the river to Jericho, and now he needed to conquer it. So he asked God, who told him how to do it. God tells Joshua that the way to defeat this huge city is just to walk around it with his people blowing horns, and the walls around the city will just fall down on their own. And what does Joshua do? He doesn't say, "Oh, that sounds stupid, God. I don't believe in ram's horns. Everyone will laugh at me. It won't work. I don't believe you." No, he doesn't say none of that. Joshua, who now has figured out that he is not in fact the manager now that Moses is dead. He is still an assistant manager, only now serving his God, the real manager. Joshua calls the people together and he says with confidence, "This is what we're going to do." And he tells them God's plan. And what happens is that the people march and they blow horns, and the walls of Jericho come a-tumbling down, and the Israelites take the city of Jericho. You know, when you and I look at what God has brought us through already, all the obstacles He has helped us to overcome throughout our lives to get us right here and right now to the recovery we're experiencing, don't you think we should believe Him when He says He will be with us? You know, even if you're new to recovery today, God has got you here, hasn't He? So shouldn't we take that next step to overcome these new obstacles in our path with the faith and the confidence of people in recovery who God has never failed yet? Ask Him. Ask Him for courage to change, just as He has changed you before, and then take that next step. Not later, not when this is all past, but now. And when you ask, then do what He tells you to do. None of this, "Hey God, I don't like that one, way too scary," or "I don't think it'll work," or "I don't like the sound of it," or whatever. "So God, will you please give me a different step instead to take?" No, none of that. Don't say that. That doesn't work. Because part of the courage deal between you and God is that God is your manager and you're His assistant manager. He'll be with you every step of the way. The only people of God who have never gotten constant instruction and courage from God are people who have not persisted in seeking Him and following Him when He speaks. Like people who give up. Don't give up. Today, what is God telling you to do in your situation? Whether it be sobriety or marriage or job or finances or love or family or legal problems, whatever it is. Hear Him loud and clear today. Let Him lead you. Ask Him which first step to take. And then can you take that step? Because the Lord is with you saying, "This is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for I will be with you wherever you go." So let's pray. God, you're with us right now. You've always been with us. Wherever we've gone, you're with us. We trust you, and we'll take the steps that we need to take to overcome the obstacles in our path to keep us from full recovery. We'll trust you. Because that's what you're promising us, God, today. Full recovery, full trust in you, full strength to change the things that we can. Not just a bluffing our way through difficulties and confusion kind of thing, but a true faith that'll bring us through everything. Thanks for the courage that you give us when only we ask. And thank you also for our recovery. Help each of us to keep going on this recovery path, going to meetings, working with our sponsor, working the 12 steps, looking for new and innovative ways to serve you, all through the power of your Son, Jesus Christ. In Him we pray. Amen. Peace out, friends. See you later.